What is up, guys? Logan and Kyle here. We're going through some progressions that we've written out for some of our athletes here. Um, so if you guys want to take a look at this, you can see some kind of sample days of our programming for some of our athletes and kind of get behind how our minds work when we're writing progressions, or if you guys are looking for some kind of guidance on progressions, you guys can take a look at this and just get an idea, or maybe some ideas, or if you're an athlete like looking for a coach, like this is a sample of some of our programs and kind of how we look at programming for people. So Logan, thanks for coming on. Just competed at West Coast Classic.
Yeah, man. Yeah, excited to be able to chat about it. I got a really interesting one today. I'm excited to be able to chat about it. It's like the first time I've ever done something like this. And for now, it seems like it went extremely well. But yeah, I'm excited to be able to get into it. It was definitely a little bit different than something that I've done before, but depending on how the rest of the season goes, it might be something that I look at doing for a lot of people, especially kind of younger athletes in the sport.
For sure. Yeah. So I'll be talking about kind of a power snatch progression that I went through with an individual, and then Logan will be talking about a squat progression, but kind of a little bit of a template that he had created for this athlete. And obviously you guys heard it's kind of a new thing for him. So yeah, to kick it off, guys. So this athlete had done quarterfinals. She had ended up finishing the final workout, so the 9-6-3 snatches and then burpee box jump overs. She has a 170-pound snatch, but had to squat snatch all of the 135 to get the workout done. So what we wanted to try and do to kick off the season is develop her like pulling capacity a little bit more, and try and drive up her power snatch actually. So one thing we did while we're kind of assessing that is we looked at, she just doesn't use her legs very well. She was a very upper back dominant puller. So what we're trying to do is get a little bit better extension and then some better or stronger posterior chain to kind of pull with the bar, use her legs a little bit more. So what we started off doing was we were trying to do floating power snatches. If you guys see in the comments here, no squatting. She ended up squat snatching her first week of this progression. So you will not, this is actually her second week of it. That floating power snatch, guys, you're just coming down to the ground, or so you're bringing it up to the hips, lowering it down to the ground about an inch off the ground. And what you can do with this is you can really start to feel the legs as you lower the bar. And so what we're trying to do there is just make a connection between the legs and how the legs can drive to create a little bit more power out of that pull. Hope eventually that will start to transfer over into actual pulls off the ground. So this helps you to get to feel that. And then once you're feeling it, then you can bring it to the ground and start pulling off the ground. So big one here is just the floating power snatches. We have some tempo back squats, just some leg strength. So as marches, a little accessory work for posterior chain, and then just kind of some machine aerobic power work. So then we're over on, I think this is our third day of the week actually. So snatch grip deadlifts, we're going heavy. Obviously we didn't put the first week in there, so we have some 185 there. Clean grip deadlifts in there as well. We also wanted to address some of her squatting, so you'll see that in there. This is her gymnastics maintenance piece. So the other thing that we're doing to kind of develop a little bit more strength overhead, specifically like catching the bar, is just some straight up bodybuilding work. So you'll see this on every single, I think this is Friday for her. So you'll see this on every single Friday, is just some straight up just bodybuilding work. Then go over to squat clean complex. So just getting some touches on some cleans. She also has a competition coming up with something similar to this complex in it. Zombie squats, always a good thing to work that upper back strength, and then our session workout. So progressing it, We went to clusters this week just to try and get a little bit more weight out of it. I think we were trying to hit that 115, 125 weight in there. Went to some muscle snatches to kind of work on some extension a little bit more. Same thing, back squat, span and so as much as aerobic power. Snatch grip deadlifts again, clean grip deadlifts. So this is kind of like that strength piece for the posterior chain specifically, kind of in the hypertrophy realm. If you're looking at it from that aspect, pretty similar here. I think there's just a volume progression, and then some squat clean maintenance work with the complex, and then front squat work as well. Our session workout for the day, coming down. So our goal was to try and get better at the open workout. So we gave her some power snatches for time at 125, brought it up to knee height block for some muscle snatches, just specifically working on really being explosive through that top of the knee into the hip. A little bit more explosion for opening up the hip here. I think this is actually might have been a deload week also. There's a week in here where I didn't grab that she had a competition, so this might be the week before that. But power snatch off of 2-inch deficit. So here we can really start to work on her extension, pulling that bar. It gets you to be a little bit more patient, pulling the bar off of the ground. Clean grip deadlifts again, just to kind of get some touches on some clean work. Bodybuilding day. And then we had just kind of like some maintenance stuff, squat, snatch, clean jerk, build, do a tough single on this day. And then our session workout again. Went back to the floating power snatches after the deload and or competition. We're starting to get around 125. So her max of all lifetime was 135. So we're starting to creep up pretty heavy here. Went even into floating muscle snatches here just to try and get those legs involved a little bit more on some muscles. Same thing here. One deficit snatches again off of blocks, deficit snatches, just trying to get the bar into the hip a little bit better. I think this was just a straight up intensity progression. So 230 pounds there. I think this might have been her competition day, but I'm not 100% on that.
Okay.
Floating snatches, again, just an intensity progression. She was looking good on all this stuff. So we're just straight progressing it until she couldn't anymore. This is kind of where we started to see some success with some of this stuff. So we just started to try and push it a little bit more. So we were seeing she was adapting pretty well to these floating power snatches. So we were just trying to progress this. I think this was the week so 130 this week. If we go down to the next week, 135, which was literally her previous 1RM. She was able to do this. So at this point in time, we probably knew she was pretty equipped to handle a new 1RM power snatch. Same thing off the deficits. We just saw it was working. We had a build to a triple or a build to a 5RM last week. Three sets of 5, or 5 sets of 3 at 90% of last week's. So just kind of some maintenance work there, not super heavy on that one. Power clean to a tough single. I think this is kind of like, this was another deload, or she was starting a taper for another competition at this point in time. So some deficit power snatches, 5x3 at 90% of her 5RM, power clean to a tough single, which is going to be part of that next competition. But we also got to work on some pulling power, some skill work for that competition. And then this is where she actually PR'd her power snatch at 140. So 5-pound PR. I think though that if we get some more touches on it, so this is actually one of the first times that she's pulled off of the ground since that deload. So I think what we're going to start doing now is actually just incorporating more pulling from the ground and see if we can drive that up a couple more pounds. But I think that her capacity at 135 right now, we're going to test it next week after the competition, but has greatly improved. So she'll at least be able to power snatch some of those bars now instead of full squat snatching them. So she'll be able to power snatch a couple, and then when she needs to, go into her squat snatches. So, but pretty successful. We just ran some kind of like aerobic power stuff and some maintenance CrossFit. The start of this was directly after the open, so that's why you kind of only see machine work. And then let's see, was it? Yeah, so during the deload is when we started to bring her back. So kind of like after she's been building back into things after the open, we started to bring her back into, or I'm sorry, quarterfinals, into a little bit more quote unquote CrossFit-y stuff, 15 cals, 100 double unders. Then we're starting to bring some wall balls back in, wall balls and burpees. Here we have box jumps and toes to bar. This is actually progression for her competition. And then progressed it, and then another test run through one of the competition workouts. So nothing super fancy here, guys. It was really just driving home some of the accessory work that you might see in snatches rather than the full lift. So obviously we had her take full lifts one time in that deload week. And then the rest of them were just kind of like some accessory components to it until she actually went and PR'd her snatch. So don't necessarily have to do, I think we had done another progression, or maybe I'd done a post on this about like strengthening the weak chain or the weakest part of the armor. And that was kind of like using her legs and getting her extension. So we just worked around those two things. And we saw some good results like in her power snatch. So
Gotcha. That's super interesting. Yeah, I really like I really like using those floating snatches to really drive those legs, and really I've used them before to get people to really pull with their hamstrings. Just because like it's so much different in that you're like fighting the inertia of the bar, from going all the way back down. I mean, you're getting, I mean, I would say it's like harder than an eccentric almost, because you're going down and then you're having to stop the bar and then go back up.
Yeah.
It's so
like
those are
of like an isometric in there too, almost.
Right. So yeah, those have been great.
Yeah, it helps to like. So what ends up happening is like you start to use your stretch reflex in it, and that can help people to like fully understand what's going on with their legs, because a lot of the times it's just hard to get that feeling off of the ground, because they're not previously loaded, so there's no reflex at that point in time. So like here, like people can actually feel the stretch reflex happen, and so it's a little easier. Like the second deadlift is always the easier deadlift, typically, unless you're like
for sure. Sure.
Like same thing with the floating snatches, like that stretch reflex will take over and it'll allow you to feel those legs a little bit more.
Right. And yeah, I think it's hard to get some athletes to use their legs if they've never done like a jumping sport or done like a lot of like plyometric stuff. Because for me, if it's someone that has like done a lot of plyometrics, or they played a sport where jumping was taught, they kind of know what it feels like to use your legs, and they can just cue a lot easier on Olympic lifts, just jump with the bar, and they kind of know what that feels like. And then there's some athletes that just, maybe they weren't taught plyometrics early on, or for whatever reason, they don't know what it feels like to essentially jump with the bar, because like that's essentially what Olympic lifting is you're jumping with weight. But yeah, that's it can for sure be, and especially like I mean, I don't know if this is your athlete or this athlete in particular, but I've seen it too on people that hinge super heavy on deadlifts, whether that be like from habit or just how they're built. Like I've seen people that have like long levers, so they just hinge a little bit more when they deadlift, so like they try to bring that over to Olympic lifting, and it's it's terrible.
I mean, you can have success in it for the sport like CrossFit, but like if you actually go an Olympic lift, like you're fucked.
For sure.
But yeah, it's definitely harder for individuals who have longer limbs, especially legs, to really feel like the legs. Yeah, because it's just like they're in like not necessarily like they're for their squat, but they'll be able to deadlift a lot more with like a higher hip and just pulling all posterior chain.
Right.
But like there's a finesse and a technique to the Olympic lifts that require you to use your legs if you want that bar in a good position as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Getting those individuals to use their legs is a little bit harder, but
for sure.
Not impossible. I actually saw somebody that is on Instagram the other day that's not using their legs because their adductors are actually so tight that they have a longer limbs and they can't drive their knees out to clear space for the bar. So they almost have to like use their posterior chain to like pull the bar. It's kind of interesting. I hadn't seen that before. So
yeah, I didn't see that either. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. You want to hit up yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So just a little bit about this. This is I just took the 2 days that I put in for squatting on this. So this is one of my clients. We took a considerable amount of time off the open. Took like 2 weeks, like totally off, and then we kind of slowly built up. But for this was something new that I was trying out. And it basically was doing very minimal. First of all, this guy is like 22 years old, so he's pretty young in the sport. So I just decided that it would be something super beneficial, that we just only work on the basics. And like we have like for this cycle, it was about 8 weeks long. I didn't ride any Metcons. It was just like aerobic long work and then strength work and no Olympic lifting. It was just like just raw strength and basically raw endurance. There was one, I gave them Wednesdays in the PM to do a workout with friends. And then I gave them our session workout on Saturdays just to like keep a little bit of variety and keep some touches on stuff. But I really just wanted to have a good amount of time of just getting really strong and really enduring, kind of both opposite ends of the spectrum. Just because I've seen that it's worked really well if you do that, those together. Just because like the long, slow stuff doesn't really seem to affect strength that much, especially the way that we were training it. We weren't training like a ton of volume. It was mainly just time under tension and positions. So yeah, I thought it worked really well. And to me, just the CrossFit Metcons they're the hardest on the body. And I mean, he's just finishing up with the cycle. So we had 8 weeks, and heck, like the open isn't till, March, and it's only June. So took a good amount of time off from doing a lot of like Metcon stuff. And we worked on, pure strength, pure endurance, and then gymnastics, strict pulling. I didn't have him do, that was another thing kind of with the protocol. I didn't have him do any kipping movements because we literally just worked strict everything. And it's got him. I mean, he said that we kind of just started the testing phase, but he said he's the absolute strongest he's ever been. So that was really cool to see. And kind of the way that I kind of like I've always been like a big proponent of the basics, but I just kind of thought like there's so many people that come into the sport that have backgrounds in other sports that allow for them to pick up CrossFit faster. So like it's not uncommon to see like a gymnast pick up CrossFit and be pretty good at it within a short amount of time. Now they kind of have to be like a bigger gymnast on the female side. Just because the strength numbers are a little bit higher. And then on the male side, it seems like athletes that have played lower division football are kind of like where you see, at least in my opinion, where you see a lot of athletes pick up the sport quickly. And what I mean by that is like not like a D1 Power 5 school where they're like so fast twitch and explosive, but more maybe like FCS schools, D2. That seems to where they're powerful, but then they're also not totally on that end of the spectrum. But anyways, so I kind of had a theory that, these athletes had such a long time building a base, because like they played college sports, they played high school sports, they've been training for so long, and they're already so strong that they just pick it up so quickly. So I just thought that, I was dealing with an athlete that hadn't had that. So I was kind of like, well, I think that to give us the highest peak, we need to raise all of these numbers up. And just from the strength testing so far, it looks like it paid off. We'll have to see how it translates into the rest of the season, but yeah, I'm excited to get into it. So what I had him do is I had him do front squats once a week on Mondays, back squats once a week on Fridays. I'm a big fan of giving the most, at least in the off season, the biggest weakness, not biggest weakness, but the thing that I'm trying to drive up, I really like doing after a rest day. So that's why I picked Monday and Friday. And then we also worked on some pressing, and some straight gymnastics. We did a pull up on the bar, pull up on rings, dips on rings, kind of progress that through volume. But anyways, so with the front squat, I chose heavy doubles, with a long eccentric. So on Mondays, this was at, I don't have it in there, this was at 70%, started at 70%. Back squat was just maintenance. At 80%, I wanted to throw in back squat because I still wanted them to feel heavyweight, and train the legs that way as well. I didn't want to just do all front squat. So I wanted to put the back squat in there with a minimal volume just to keep those legs strong. And then we also thought that I wanted long eccentrics, just because the front squat is so core dominant. Not core dominant, but your core is just involved way more, your anterior, than the back squat. So I really wanted to drive home those positions with a long eccentric. So week one, I had him at 5 sets of 2 with a 6-second negative, on front squat, back squat, 5 by 2, 80%. And then the next week, brought him up to 77%. And the back squat kind of went up by 2% each week. This was a very slow build. And then next week we were at 80, back squat was at 84. As you can see, we're kind of progressing all these gymnastics and strict press. I kind of had a strict press cycle going as well. Started off with kind of the lower range of 70%, and then had a heavy day in there as well, hitting some higher percentages every week. And then so fourth week, 82%, 86%. So we kind of followed like a same pattern of going up 2% after this. And then once we got to 84%, there's just a little bit heavier to go with a 6-second negative. So we had 1 week of a 3-second pause, kind of working that transitional phase. And then back squat, we're still working up to 88%. Next week, we are at 86%. This is where I took away the eccentric, and then added a rep. Responded pretty well to that. Just due to how he was moving the bar, and how he had been hitting all the other percentages with the eccentric. Thought we needed an extra rep in there, just to keep on driving up the adaptation. Back squat, we're starting to get pretty heavy, 5 by 2 at 90. Gave him a week off of back squat on this week. He was feeling a little beat up, so I took away a week of squatting. Next week, I was at 3 reps, 88%. And then I took away a week of front squat the next week, and then added back in that week of back squat that were heavy. And then this was our last week here where we were at, this is, I think, second to last week. We were a little bit heavier with the front squat, 90%. Started a little bit of a deload with the back squat. And then the last week of the front squat cycle, we were at 93% with no back squat. And then we maxed. So I thought, this is the first time I had done pretty, I guess, heavy eccentrics. Like we went all the way up to 82%. And we stayed kind of relatively heavy with starting at 70 and going to going to 82%, and then ending with a pause at 84. I think this was hugely beneficial just because this client had a pretty like his clean was a little bit too like he had enough strength front squat wise, clean a lot more, and that just had to do with some positioning and just like some tension during the catch. So we really wanted to drive home that receiving position and just that tension in the bottom. So that was kind of the idea behind the progression. It's something that I've used kind of similarly, but with sport athletes, with a football team. So it was something that I knew had worked similarly, but I didn't do it with front squats. I actually just did 2 back squat days, but it was kind of the same. It was kind of the same style with just heavy doubles with a long eccentric. So yeah, this actually led to a 50-pound PR on his front squat. Squatted 405. So huge, and honestly, I think he could have squatted more because the 405 looked really good. And then he ended up back squatting 455 for a single, which was also a PR. So that was huge for him, and like those are, I mean, pretty much where he needs to be elite in the sport. So now we can kind of not put strength so much on the back burner, but like we don't have to put as much emphasis on it. And we can really start to work like the other end of the spectrum, like some muscular endurance, some lactate threshold stuff. But that giving us like this huge base is going to allow us to have some really good training cycles down the road and really have some like good intensity later on down the road as well. So yeah, I'm super excited on how it ended up working out. And, it's this cycle was by no means easy too. A lot of people, especially in this space, they got to do their Metcons, they got to do, their class workouts every now and then, but he was dedicated to be able to do this. He let me do this, for the first time. It had always been something that I wanted to do, but I just didn't. Like, you got to have a client that's pretty willing to do some stuff that's like this training was pretty much not really CrossFit. So, props to him for being able to stick through it, because I think it'll lead to some pretty awesome results come like the open and quarterfinals. So, yeah, excited to see what happens with it.
Yeah, this was, base building is always so important, like, especially if you younger athlete that hasn't like touched a lot of this stuff before.
Right.
Some of my most successful years have been when I have had an athlete that's lacking in an area like that, and then been able to put them through like an extensive base building period for that, for either strength or conditioning purposes. So cool that you're able to do both and set that.
Yeah, I think I was actually having this conversation with someone the other day. I think that like if the sport of CrossFit was just a sport, athletes would train way better. Like if there were no fitness regime of CrossFit, this like training in the sport would be so much easier, because you wouldn't maybe be as tempted as much to get off pace or throw down with others when you maybe shouldn't necessarily. And you would look at it just like you would any other sport. You have huge, you'll have some big off seasons. You'll have times where you're not necessarily doing a lot of stuff that's the exact sport, but you're doing a lot of base building. I was chatting about that the other day, but
most training programs right now come out of CrossFit, the fitness regime. They don't come out of CrossFit, the sport, train for the sport.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. And it's like lines can get blurred too easily. Very easily.
Yeah. When was the last time you guys tested his front squat?
It had been I didn't test it before this cycle, but it had been a while.
Okay.
I know that he had done it like within the year for sure.
Yeah.
Because I had put him through I had him like getting his legs stronger has been something that we've been trying to do.
Yeah,
So it had been, within the year for sure.
for sure. So those 2% increases, about how many pounds a week was that? Was that like 5 pounds a
Uh,
week? Degree
yeah,
or
that came out to about like 5-ish pounds a week for like front squat, and then like around 10 for back squat.
okay.
And I'd kind of played around with like kind of different loading in the past. Like I've been able to just having my other job, just being a strength and conditioning coach, I've been able to just like play around with kind of percentages in
Mhm.
a like with a mass sample size, and just kind of being
Yeah,
able to see like which ones work, and then like being able to see like a lot of people how they move certain percentages, and like not everyone's the same, but it just gives you just a lot more not knowledge, but like just experience with percentages, and like
yeah,
knowing like 10% in my experience has been way too much from a week to
for
week
sure.
basis. 5% can get a little bit aggressive. So like if you can go up like 2.5% to 5% on a long cycle like this, it's to me that's like most ideal.
Yeah.
Or like I've done like a stair step approach where it's like you're up 10% and then you go back 5% the next week, and then you go up 10, then you go back 5,
Okay.
or or up 5 back 2.5, something like that.
Mhm.
But just something that like at first he, obviously this was like pretty easy to move like a back squat like 5x2 at 80, and then like a 6-second negative, only 2 reps at 70.
Mhm.
But it was just, it was a pretty, it seemed like a very manageable progression just from the feedback that I got. And like there
Yeah.
weren't many days where it was like failed reps and stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, the hardest part of this cycle probably was like the endurance work that I gave him. I gave him let's see, I think 3 days of like 60-minute time domain endurance workouts, or sorry, not endurance workouts, but endurance work and progressions.
Super
I
low.
use, yeah, very long.
Yeah.
And those were always in the PM. Strength was always in the AM. That stuff was in the PM. And typically the hardest endurance days were ones after rest days as well. Um, but yeah, I think it'll give him a really big base. He's someone also that had kind of struggled with machines.
Mhm.
So I think this is going to be huge, especially just being a shorter athlete. Just your strength is going to just be so important to have power on the rower, because you don't have the luxury of like of having long limbs.
Yeah.
So if you don't like, I mean, that's the main difference. That's a huge main difference between like men and women on machines, is just like raw strength
Mhm.
and just power output. So like same thing for like men within different sizes is like, if you're um everyone's going to have different limitations, but like if you're weaker and then you get stronger, more than likely your power output is going to go up. And that was just
Yeah.
something that we had really seen, because he didn't necessarily have like his like 2K row and 5K row and things of that like time domain were good, but like he
Mhm.
just didn't have that like 500-meter row that was going to enable him to have those 2K and 5K times, because like he was enduring. That wasn't the limitation. It was just like power output.
Power production.
um Right, right.
Yeah.
Like no matter how much, like we're getting to the point where it's like no matter how much endurance progressions we are going to do, he was always going to be limited just by like lack of power on the machine. And so I think this is a pretty good solution to it. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where this goes. I'm gonna kind of go into a more muscular endurance and kind of lactate threshold training, because I think it blends pretty nicely after a strength progression. I still going to have some longer, slower stuff, but I'm going to think this is going to be a good time to really drive up the intensity and see just how he responds to it after going through a progressive strength building and base building cycle. And next cycle we'll also we'll start Olympic lifting again. So that'll be, I'm anxious to see what those will end up looking like
after some time off, for sure. Yeah. So I've done to, I guess, cap it off here since we've been talking for so long. But I've done something similar to this, and like it just takes a minute to get back into like the sports specific side.
For sure. Definitely.
Like if there's a time in the year that you want to do something like this, especially if the athlete's young and you're trying to build them up, like now's the time to do it. So you obviously can like progress his volume and sports specific movements a lot easier,
right?
Especially like, I mean, depending on the athlete, but yeah, typically like CrossFitters and people that are built for CrossFit, you can aggressively kind of attack some of the volume components of the sport
during
absolutely. So
yep.
Well, cool, guys. Thanks for listening. If you guys are obviously watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and subscribe. If you don't mind sharing this with a few friends that you might think would find this interesting, that'd be great. If you guys are finding us on YouTube for the first time, you can head over to our Instagram at blacklisted.hq. Give us a follow on there. And as always, if you guys are looking for some coaches, send us a message or get a hold of us via email, admin@blacklistedhq.com. So thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you next time.